with some Canadian heavy main battle tanks here. Basically, we had C1, C2, and you know, 2A4s, 2A6s, and a bunch of other of the Leopard family of tanks, which are quite popular around the world. I can't remember the exact numbers, but something like you know 8,000 of them. Can't remember how many countries adopted the Leopard tank, but quite a few of them. Now this year, I'm going to just read you kind of some random pages from the DND website here in Canada. Okay, through August 2006, while fighting in Panjua Range, DND Stimulus denied reports that the Leopard tanks were being considered for Afghanistan. Meanwhile, some of the CF's 28-year-old tanks were being reconditioned, and B Squadron of Lord Starthcon's Horse Royals Canadians trained for the deployment to Afghanistan. CFB Wainwright on the 9th of September 2006. The first C2 Leopards started going on a long trip to Kandahar. Okay, the Leopard. The Leopard and the Taurus ARB left. Sort of in the picture, were loaded onto at least an Antov, Russian-built aircraft, for the 10,000-kilometer flight to the Central Asian in Kyrgyzstan, for the CF vehicles transferred to the USAF C-17 to deliver to Kandahar, with the Taurus publicly revealed at first KFA when the Leo was shown. The Leo 2 main battle tanks, medium Mexus armored upgrades. So basically what they did is they took the old C1 tanks and the C2 tanks, and they put basically armored, with blowback armor, that type of thing. Basically, they weighed down the tank. The first reporting delivery of these Leos in Kandahar, we assume that the CF had wisely chosen to send its half dozen of heaviest armored tanks first. Not so in later images of the Afghanistan Leopards. It was apparent that all of the tanks had been sent being up-armored and heavy Mexus kit, thick composite plate that fills in above the road wheels and extended turret and side hulls and plates. The thick Nexus panels added weight, but will provide superior protection for the main anti-tank threats, large IEDs. Okay, but this is still an old tank, and they did have some heating problems with the older Leopards, not adequate enough cooling. One of the problems with main battle tanks is they got a big diesel engine. Big diesel engines typically put out a lot of heat, and in the hot Afghanistan desert, and the high altitudes, it was very hard on the Leopards. They had to, run them for a bit, let them cool down, run them for a bit. But the point of deploying the Leopards has much to do with its gun as protection. The L7A3 gun fires a full range of NATO 105mm tank ammunition, and loaded ammunition would normally consist of large proportions of armored piercing rounds, with the threat from armored armor in Afghanistan. The Leos will likely carry more squash head and high explosive rounds, while escorting duties have been the Leopard's primary form part of the UCF direct fire squadrons. Crew, driver, gunner, loader, radio operator, commander. Armament: 105mm L7A3 main gun, 52 rounds. Coaxial flex 3 7.62 C6 machine guns. It doesn't say how many rounds. Size: length 9 meters, 9.5 meters long. Gun forward 8.717 meters. Aft 7.72 meters. Hull width 3.37 meters wide. High 2.62 meters overall. 2.48 meters turret top. So they kind of give you like specifications of everything here. Combat weight 42.4 tons plus. Leo 2, power plant, 620 kilowatt multi-fuel MB838 and ZF transmission. Max speed 65 kilometers an hour. Operation range 650 kilometers road. Okay, so that's the C2 Leopard. Now we're going to move on to the big boys. The latest Leopards that we have about 500 of these things. Most of them are the old C1s and C2s, but we also do a loan lease thing with Germany, where Germany will basically upgrade your tanks for you. You lease them for XYZ amount of time. You send them back to Germany, and they'll upgrade certain variants. The C1s, the C2s, or the O1s, the O2s. I don't think they upgrade anymore because the 2A6 and 2A7s are just so much more advanced that they're pretty much a new tank. One of the things when the Leopard tank came out is that it was designed to withstand a hit from a 20mm cannon in close quarters. This was the first tank I think Germany built after World War II that they were allowed to build, and they built it to take on the Soviets. And they, knowing that the Soviets had tank superiority, and with East Germany and West Germany, they had to be able to stop an onslaught. So they built a tank that was, the Germans always been good at building tanks. Armor's always been one of the things, but the Leopard ones are, vastly different from the 2A7s now. So the 2A6 is tanks currently used in CF Afghanistan. This is a little bit old. Okay. Actually, no, I'm going to go to the 2A4M. Okay, the 2A4M, because that's kind of after the Leopard 2, C2, is something old, something new, something borrowed, etc., etc. The first Canadian Forces Leopard 2 tanks were 20 Runwister Leopard 2A6 on loan from Germany since 2007. These tanks were later joined in Afghanistan by 5 refurbished upgrade CF Leopard 2A4M. The 2A4M can variant was created by Jeremy Kraus Maffen Wagenman, if I said his name right, to upgrade its ex-Dutch Leopards 284s. That's what we had is from the Dutch, and we basically these tanks actually move around quite a bit. 1 year we might own them, next year somebody else might own them, right? That type of thing. New variants was first unveiled with the KMW in 2010. The ex-Dutch Leopard 2A4 hulls were refurbished, running gears upgraded, and composite armor protection similar to that of the loaned Leopard 2A6M can for cannon installed. The turrets and receiver composite armored again is similar to the Leopard 2A6M. Protection but different in detail. IED blast protection being paramount. Leopard 2A4M cans also distinct in retaining the shorter original L44 120mm main gun. So this had a bigger main gun, had more better cooling, RPG fences kind of attached to it, a thicker hull. One of the things is that the first upgrades, the first Leopards that went to Afghanistan, this is at a time when Jean Chrétien was saying we don't need battle tanks anymore. What are we going to use? The battlefield was changed, but yet it was the tool for the job. We needed these tanks as escorts. Now the first Leopard tanks that come onto the scene in Afghanistan, the Canadian ones, actually have armor that was built basically 2 blocks from where I used to work at Princess Auto on D&D in Ottawa, and basically they built some of the tank did rework some of the tanks there. So these Leopards, nobody else in the world has Leopards that look quite like them. The tank actually has more of a kind of a roundish look to it, almost T80 like, but like a Hulk version of a T80, with a Leopard bottom. That's the best way I could describe it. But again, those tanks were, getting old. They're all old. But the thing is that the 2A4 is a newer variant, but it's specific to us. So it has a bigger main gun, the 120mm, thicker protection, anti-mine stuff. Really, one thing that Leopard Germany does with their Leopard tanks is you can customize it to whatever it is you want. So if your big fear is other tanks, you will put on a different type of armor for that. If your big fear is IEDs and maybe getting stuck, well, they'll put on a different type of armor so that you're more mobile, you know, and able to take on lighter weapons, that type of thing. So anyway, crew 4, driver, gunner, loader, vehicle, CDR, commander, I guess. Armament: 120 millimeter L44 main gun, 2 by 7.62 C6 16 by 70 millimeter grenade launchers, which the early tanks had some grenade launchers on it as well. I don't know how many rounds of this 7.62. Probably about 4,000, I would think. Later, they upgraded to a 7 millimeter, I think, as well. I believe at one variant of the Leopard, Sea Leopard, Canadian Leopards had up to 60 rounds in them. I think that was a 105 millimeter gun though. So I'm not going to give you the size dimensions again. Weight, just to give you a, it's 60, what's it called, 62.5 tons from 56 tons with add-on armor. So the add-on armor makes them, you know. Now this also has a more powerful diesel engine. It's 1100 kilowatts, so almost double, from about 800 horsepower up to about 1200 horsepower. Or sorry, that would be 1100 kilowatts. MTU MB 873 V12 diesel. Yeah. Top speed a little faster, 72 kilometers road on road, 55 kilometers off road. Now, I don't know what the range is, it doesn't say, but I can imagine with that extra weight, it's probably a little bit less. Out of service trials and onto the operational fire. Some surprises were expressed at the new Leopards 2A4 and CAN being deployed so close to the end of the CF combat mission in Afghanistan. There are two compelling reasons. The first 5 Leopards, the 2A4Ms, brought Leopard 2 numbers back to about 20, assuming that 15 remaining 2A6Ms held out. And D&D had the opportunity to give the new Leopard 2A4M real baptism of fire under operation conditions with the end of the CF combat missions. The 5 Leopards 2A4Ms were flown out of KAF. So here we go. Leopard 2A4M's home for the first time. The Leopards 2A4M CAN began arriving into Canada in late January 2012. The refurbished Leo 2A4Ms were delivered by sea to Halifax, Nova Scotia, to the Rheinland-Hall, Canada. Yeah, Rheinland-Hall, Canada in Quebec by rail. With final checks completed, the tanks were back on the flat cars heading for Edmonton, where they joined Lord Strathcon's horses RC in the first week of February 2012. Now we have 14 Leopard 2A4Ms cans, and the Armoured School of Georgetown having Leopard 2A4s, with D&D announcing a total of 42 Leopards in service by the end of 2013. So that's quite a bit of tanks, you know. If our ships are not ready for World War III, at least our tanks will be. So I'll go to the 2A6. Okay, this is the final variant that we have. On April 12th, 2007, D&D confirmed rumors that Canada would be acquiring new Leopard tanks, as reported in Der Spiegel. Canada will first lease 20 mine-protected Leopard 2A6Ms from Brunswick stocks, but the following on purchase was not for ex-German tanks. Instead, 100 slightly used tanks would come from the Netherlands in the order for the 20 Leopard 2A6s and 80 early Leopard 2A4s, all refurbished. So we got quite a bit of tanks. Apparently the Dutch government swung Canada a better deal than the Germans. The cost, $650 million, was to cover both the lease and purchase of the tanks. Logistics and training would be included, and the ex-Dutch Leopard 2s were slightly different, equipped to fit suit Canada well, because, well, I guess the Dutch, pretty much have the same type of snow we have, and that type of thing. Germany too, but we're a little bit more north of Germany, type of thing. So you know, like the machine gun Commental, but many others will be Canadianized. Again, we have our kind of own own version. Uh, that's one thing when you don't build your own equipment. And one thing that they do really well with the Leopard is that they, one thing Germany does do is they can custom made, like Australia has their own version of it, and stuff like that. So they do very well with it. On August 7th, 2007, the KMW announced the delivery of the first 20 Leopard 286 cans to Canadian forces. The press release said that in the preceding weeks, the KMW has readapted those tanks to the configuration that meets all the requirements of the current missions, including the installation of slant armor that came as a surprise, although the anti-RPG cage were appearing on the CF-TL labs in Afghanistan too. These vehicles were fitted with the CF electronics and air conditioning, but retained some of the German equipment MG3 machine guns. Under the MG3 is a 7mm, I believe. Under the loan terms, Canada would restore the tanks to the Brunswick standards, replacing any destroyed vehicles. It would turn out that surviving T2A6Ms will serve until July 2011. So there's a little bit of old article. And moving right down here, okay. Yeah, so it just tells you when they were deployed. Okay, crew, driver, gunner, loader, radio operator, commander. Rheinhall, the main armament, Rheinhall L55 120mm and the L44 120mm main gun. One slightly longer than the other. 42 rounds. Main gun range 3,500 meters, or 11,483 feet, just a little over 2 miles. That's pretty impressive. Size, well, you get the size of this thing. It's big. Combat weight 62 tons. Fully loaded, and 55 tons, 0.15 tons empty. Same 1100 kW engine, MTU MB 873, rank HSWL 354 as the transmission. Speed between 68 and 72 kilometers on road or off road, and reverse 31 kilometers. Range 500 to 550, road cruise off-road variants. So between 500 and 550 kilometers. So it's 100 kilometers less because it's heavier and more protected. So you get less range, but your trade-off is that you're better protected. To my knowledge, I don't think we lost any tanks in Afghanistan. We lost quite a few labs, most of them due to rollovers and IEDs. Yeah, so the ex-Netherlands Leopard 2A4 tanks, refurbished as the 2A4Ms. Okay, yeah, I already read that article. So I guess that's, yeah, so I guess at this point, oh yeah, so the engine is in horsepower for those of you, yeah. Other sources said that the 40 Canadianized Leopard 2A6s and 2A4s and Ls for training in Canada, and a mix of Leopards 2 base support vehicles to replace the CF Leopard 1 base Taurus recovery vehicles, the Badger engineering vehicle, and the Beaver Bridge layers. It was revealed that further the 13 Leopards would Leopard 2s would be brought from the basis forces mobility enhancements conversions. There would highly competitive Leopard 2 resale market, and the Dutch had sold the Leopard 2 A4s to Norway for the 1.5 B corner, about 285 million, or 5.5 million per vehicle. And Denmark, Germany then undercut the Netherlands on the sale to Greece. The CF sale may be Holland's revenge. Okay. Training logistics were said to be included in the I read that part. 650 million. The Harper government announced 20 years, 650 million in service support for the use of the Leopard 2s. The ISS announced the effectively doubled the original of the use of the Leopard 2. Early reports suggest that both X-Dutch types 2A6s and 2A4s would be sent to Canada. This seems not to have been the case. When the first 40 tanks arrived by sea in Montreal in December 2008, all were Leopard 2A4s. These tanks were to be rebuilt rebuilt at the 202 WD, but that didn't happen. It now seems that these will be shipped back to Europe for rebuild, with others now stored in Holland. Some sources gave Leopard 2A6 combat weight at 62 tons. Neither figures allow for the additional weight of the mine protection kit, so it might be 68 tons, who knows. The power plant is a liquid-cooled 47.6 liter turbocharged V12 multi-fuel NB873 KA501, produced 1500 horsepower at 2600 RPM. Some sources say the KA501 is capable of 1325 kilowatts or 1800 horsepower at 2600. The rank automatic transmission for forward and for reverse gears. So I think that's a lot of info on a really cool tank. Canada's always had good equipment. Or sorry, always made good with its equipment, but it's only in the recent years where we've really gotten good equipment with the newer government. Our C1s and C2s, I mean, they go back way back, but the newer Leopards, they're definitely modernized. If we do kind of, considering the road that we're traveling now geopolitically, if we ever do get into a problem with the Russians, we might not have the numbers, but all tanks in all, we do have about 500 really heavy-duty tanks here. They might not be quite as fast and as mobile as the T-72s and the T-90s because they're lighter. Those tanks are lighter, but I have no doubt that the advantage would still be to the Canadians. Now, in some of the competitions where they take basically NATO competitions, tank competitions, where they, Canadians actually, a couple of years, actually won the best tank crew in the world a few times. And this is going up against like Challenger tanks, Abrams tanks, everything like that. Now, at one point, we were supposed to actually buy the Abrams tanks. Why we decided not to, there's a lot of politics going on that, but the Americans pretty much thought it was a done deal because we almost buy everything from the United States. It's more of a proximity thing than anything, but it turned out that the gas guzzling power of the jet-powered Abrams tank was just a little too expensive for us to run because you always had to run it with basically a foot in a bucket of gas, right? So, I mean, so we opted for the Leopard just because it was cheaper to run the Leopard. But, I think it was an excellent choice because the Leopard, unlike don't get me wrong, Abrams is a good tank, but it's an old tank. I mean, these tanks go back, very, very long. Like the Leopard series tanks goes back, to the 60s, I believe. Don't quote me on either early 70s, late 60s, that type of thing. That said, the Abrams tanks goes back just about as far, but the Leopard tanks are like mechanical kits. You can basically upgrade them. And all the newer variants from the 2A4s on and 2A5s are pretty much all mechanical kit. The Germans designed these tanks to be upgradable decades to come. So that's one great thing about the Leopard tanks is they're giant mechanical kits. You can change an engine in one of these things with the Taurus engineering vehicle. You can pop an engine out. Well, they say within an hour. You can pop an engine out, put an engine back in, type of thing. There's a lot of other cool things about the Leopard tank. I have seen them up close. I've never been in one, but I have seen them up close at the Ottawa War Museum. They have two of them in there. They have the one with the D&D armor on it. That's kind of a little bit more rounded. But the thing is that they did see some light combat in Afghanistan. There was one guy reported that there was a Taliban mortar crew that started firing, mortars at the base. They went out and made one kill shot, killed 6 guys at 1,100 meters. So, I mean, they said, one thing about these things, when they roll down the road, and I talked to tank crews, Canadian tank crews, or one Canadian tank crew in particular, that ended up switching over to the lab, and he says, a tank day was a busy day. He says, for every 1 hour of use, it says like 11 hours of routine maintenance. But he says it was a fun, it was a hard work, but he says it was a lot of fun. But he said also too, he says one thing about a tank is it's so noisy and everything like that. When it's coming down the road, everybody hears you, but everybody gets out of your way. He goes, you're coming down the road, you're noisy, but and you know they know you're coming, but you don't care, you know. So he goes, there's a bit of an invincibility feeling you get in these tanks. Now the thing about these tanks, and like everything, uh, you know, until they go up against another tank that's of, you know, like I mean, a T-55 against a 2A6 is not hardly a fair match. You know what I mean? But you know, you can't discount old tanks as being inferior. It's all kind of whoever gets the first shot, right? But you know, these tanks definitely have you know, a huge advantage over the older Soviet tanks in a lot of ways. You know, so with that said, you know, until we see these things go toe to toe with uh, you know, more modern tanks, we won't really know what they're capable of surviving. It's not so much what firepower they're capable of dishing out. I mean, these things will destroy us. You know, they could destroy a small country. You know what I mean? Like they're pretty powerful. You know, you're talking a lot of explosive power there. But you know, can they survive getting hit by, you know, 125 millimeter T90 or T72 or T80 main gun? That's the thing that we don't know. However, the history of how reactive armor came to be was there was a German, you know, basically a guy who was doing research and development, and he wanted to actually just blow the snot balls out of a T-72. And one of the things he did, he says, I'm going to make this good, and he put live ammunition, you know, 125 millimeter ammunition in the T-72, and they shot at it. But when they blew up the tank, the thing that baffled them is that the tank in itself was still there. It was still pretty much in tank. Everything was charred and burned, but it was still there. Like he said, this thing should have blown sky high. And that's when he figured out when the round went in and it exploded the shells. And when the shells exploded, it canceled out the original rounds explosive power. And that's how they came up with the idea of reactive armor. It was kind of a neat story. So, but that said, they say the Challenger 2 tank is the most undestroyable tank on the planet right now. Every tank, all tanks burn, and every tank has an Achilles heel. So when Canada designed, you know, what they wanted on their tanks, it was very specific to Afghanistan. So, you know, if we were going to, let's say World War III did break out, what would we do to these tanks domestically? We'll probably add anti-sabot round armor on it because, you know, open field country, that type of thing. You know, because we already got kind of home base advantage, but that's one of the things. So the good news is that at least we have we do have a good sized tank brigade here in Canada, and we do have, you know, second to none tanks. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. So rate, subscribe, share, comment, and like. G'day, hey, hi, and welcome. So we're going to talk about some Canadian heavy main battle tanks here. Basically, we had C1, C2, and you know, 2A4s, 2A6s, and a bunch of other of the Leopard family of tanks, which are quite popular around the world. I can't remember the exact numbers, but something like you know, 8,000 of them. I can't remember how many countries adopted the Leopard tank, but quite a few of them. Now this year, I'm going to just read you kind of some random pages from the DND website here in Canada. Okay, through August 2006, while fighting in Panjua Range, DND Stimulus denied reports that the Leopard tanks were being considered for Afghanistan. Meanwhile, some of the CF's 28-year-old tanks were being reconditioned, and B Squadron of Lord Strathcon's Horse Royals Canadians trained for the deployment to Afghanistan. CFB Wainwright on the 9th of September 2006. The first C2 Leopards started going on a long trip to Kandahar. Okay, the Leopard. The Leopard and the Taurus ARB left, in the picture, were loaded onto at least an Antov, Russian-built aircraft, for the 10,000 kilometer flight to the Central Asian in Kyrgyzstan for the vehicles transferred to the USAF C-17 to deliver to Kandahar, with the Taurus publicly revealed at first KFA when the Leo was shown. The Leo 2 main battle tanks, medium Mexus armored upgrades. So basically what they did is they took the old C1 tanks and the C2 tanks and they put uh, basically armored, with blowback armor, that type of thing. Basically, they weighed down the tank. The first reported delivery of these Leos in Kandahar, we assume that the CF had wisely chosen to send its half dozen of so heaviest armored tanks first. Not so in later images of the Afghanistan Leopards. It was apparent that all of the tanks had been sent, being up armored and heavy Nexus kit, thick composite plate that fills in above the road wheels and extended turret and side hulls and plates. The thick Nexus panels added weight, but will provide superior protection for the main anti-tank threats of large IEDs. Okay, but this is still an old tank, and they did have some heating problems with the older Leopards, not adequate enough cooling. One of the problems with main battle tanks is they got a big diesel engine. Big diesel engines typically put out a lot of heat, and in the hot Afghanistan desert, and the high altitudes, it was very hard on the Leopards. They had to, run them for a bit, let them cool down, run them for a bit. But the point of deploying the Leopards has much to do with its gun as protection. The L7A3 gun fires a full range of NATO 105mm tank ammunition, and loaded ammunition would normally consist of large proportions of armored piercing rounds, with the threat from armor in Afghanistan. The Leos will likely carry more squash head and high explosive rounds, while escorting duties have made the Leopard's primary form part of the UCF direct fire squadrons. Crew, driver, gunner, loader, radio operator, commander. Armament 105mm L7A3